Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I'm your Loremaster, here to ring in the new year with another slate of videos. And let's start off with talking about Tian Xia. There are three nations which claim to be the successors of the Long Empire. So what better place to start than with these three? And what better place from these three than Lingshen? Lingshen, as stated, is one of the successor states of Longwu, the third great empire of Tian Xia. While all took on their own way of successorship, Lingshen took on the glory of military might. The former king Huang Xingzi is a man who believes might makes right. He constantly passed the same ideals to his children by having them constantly fight against each other, trying to compete to be the best. And even now, he refuses even death, using the nation's practice of producing terracotta soldiers to return to life, waiting patiently for the time to take back the throne by might. Which, talking about the former empire, let's start today's first side tangent, the part of the show where we put everything together. Longwu was the successor of the Shu Empire before it, which rose after 110 years of fighting between those successors. And by rose, I mean everyone else became bankrupt. Since the beginning, the empire was a tyrant, with long traditions like having a capital change for every emperor. There was corruption and tyranny all around, suppression of minorities, trophy hunting of dragons. Unlike other former empires, there was no large secret behind the ruling class, just incompetence waiting to fall apart. As with Longwu before, the nation of Lingshen is mostly human in nature, and mostly Tian Xia. Outside of them, this is one of the nations which still has some Tengu that were not pushed by the former empire to the east coast. The Ganji are here as well, this being close to their homelands, and Kitsune can also be found wandering the paths through the nation. The nation is a monarchy ruled by King Huang Xingzi, or it was before his death. Now it is ruled by his 11 children, who were raised to stab each other in the back, so at this point the official way of the kingdom is solve the problems locally before it becomes another thing for the children to compete over. There are also 3 governmental branches of note which are in charge of many of the yearly going on inspections, stuff along those lines. The Bureau of The Bureau of Assessment for Taxes, the Judicial Magistrate who travels to rule on high-level cases, and the Inspector of Confirmation to inspect the quality of goods. Which gets us to our second side tangent. In the real world, the Cao Wei during the Jin Dynasty created 6 departments, which worked as some of the central pillars of the Chinese government for the next millennia and a half. Their power has fluctuated from the Yuan Dynasty stripping them of all the power, to the Ming Dynasty placing them just below the emperor. And they were the Ministry of the Personnel, which is responsible for giving people appointments and promotions, the Ministry of Revenue, which works on finance, the Ministry of Rights, which oversaw Buddhism and Taoism, the Ministry of War, which needs no introduction, the Ministry of Justice, better known as the Ministry of Torture, and the Ministry of Works for the government construction projects and the maintaining of roads. Lingshen, on the other hand, is all about competition. The forgers refine iron after all, and that continuous competing against each other will eventually make one more superior at those things they're competing to be better at. Anyway, the traditional military practices include grappling, spear fighting, and archery, and most citizens will practice these at least. Those who rise in the ranks will learn horseback riding, swordplay, and mounted archery. And most specialized learning includes magic, battalion movements, espionage, and siege weapons. And finally, at the colleges called the Battle Forges, there is also much research into physics, mathematics, and navigation, especially if they agree to have their pursuits benefit the state. For a nation of people who fight to prove themselves, of course those who make up our third side tangent, the cut, would find this nation home. A wandering band who fights on the Lingshen Crane border, the organization is the greatest expression of might makes right. The weak's blood is cleaned from their blades. The strong are brought back as undead to continue fighting. And fights to the death determine both membership into the group and advancement to higher ranks. For religion in the area, both Abaddon and Iori are, of course, have strongholds, this being one of the successor states after all. A little more surprisingly is the worship of Heifeng, this being near the area where Tengu were discriminated against, but the Tengu still living here are apparently just as strong. And finally, Ye Xing and his worship hides in the shadows. Now that we're on to locations, with the capital of Lingshen being Ziwu, a large ring city which requires passage through several large gates for each ring. The Cinnabar Market is also a major city, both as a major trade city in the light and a meeting place for thieves and assassins at night. Haisang Forest is where most of the Kitsune and Tengu in the area lives, and is known as a place for arts in the militaristic nation. Likewise, Danjin, known for its mysterious crystal pillar, is where those who favor magic gather. But it is the cradle of immortality, where those old soldiers that can no longer fight are transformed into Teokal soldiers who live forever, which is the truest example of everything Lingshen stands for. Ending off, we have one final side tangent, another real-world topic, the Terracotta Army. The real-world one is made around 200 BC and was rediscovered in 1970s. The three large pits depict the armies of Qing Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. Overall, there are 800 soldiers, 130 chariots, and 670 horses, both regular horses and horses being used as mounts, all guarding the emperor's burial place. In addition, since the 1970s, smaller pits have been found which immortalize court officials, acrobats, strongmen, and musicians. Basically, it's anyone who was anyone during Qing Shi Huang's reign was immortalized. Which brings us to the end of today's video. This is one of the 3 successor states, so I guess you can tell what at least one video of my videos for the next few months is going to be. But we have a few other videos on the docket for this month first, so let's take the time to look at another deity next week. See you then.